She called him a failed podcaster, a disgrace to law enforcement, an embarrassment to the badge. Nancy Pelosi thought she was destroying another political opponent, the same attack that had worked for 40 years. But Dan Bongino wasn't a politician. He was the FBI deputy director with 38,000 agents, 18 months of investigation, and federal wiretaps of her committing crimes. When she finished her attack, he reached for his briefcase. Pelosi family criminal enterprise, $127 million in corruption. Chinese spy payments, January 6th blood money. The failed podcaster was about to end her career with FBI evidence. Nancy Pelosi had destroyed hundreds of political opponents with attacks like this. You are nothing more than a failed podcaster who has no business running federal investigations. The Democrats applauded. The media prepared their headlines. Another enemy neutralized. Dan Bongino sat perfectly still, the calm of someone holding a royal flush while his opponent just went all in with a pair of twos. "Congresswoman Pelosi," he said, his voice steady, "thank you for that fascinating assessment." He reached for his briefcase. "Since you've questioned my qualifications, let me remind you of something. I command 38,000 federal agents across 55 field offices. When the FBI investigates criminal activity, we don't ask permission from politicians." He opened a folder thick enough to be a phone book. "We follow the evidence, and the evidence against your family is extensive." Nancy's smug smile began to die. Follow us to not miss any podcast. If you find the video interesting, please like and subscribe to the channel. House Judiciary Committee live on C-SPAN. The most powerful Democrat in Congress is about to make the biggest mistake of her political life. Nancy Pelosi struts in like she owns the building. Designer suitful media entourage, that smug smile that's made conservatives sick for decades. Today she's going to destroy Trump's FBI puppet once and for all. At least that's what she thinks. Dan Bongino sits quietly at the witness table. Single briefcase, calm as ice. He's not the loud podcaster today. He's an FBI deputy director with 38,000 agents at his command and 18 months of criminal investigation files that are about to change everything. The committee chairman calls the hearing to order. Today we examine FBI operations and accountability under the current administration, standard political theater, or so everyone thinks. Pelosi doesn't waste time with pleasantries. She's going straight for the kill shot. Deputy Director Bongino, before we begin, I need to address what everyone in this room knows. Your appointment represents the complete weaponization of the FBI under Donald Trump. The room goes silent. She's coming out swinging hard. You are nothing more than a failed podcaster who built a career spreading conspiracy theories and misinformation. You have no business running federal investigations. Her voice gets nastier with each word, dripping with the condescension that's made her famous. Your so-called investigations are illegitimate partisan witch hunts that every real American sees through. You've turned the FBI into Trump's personal attack dog, targeting his political enemies while ignoring real crimes. She pauses for dramatic effect, thinking she's just delivered a killing blow that will go viral on every liberal network. Frankly, sir, you're a disgrace to law enforcement and an embarrassment to the badge. The room is dead silent. Democrats are smirking already, crafting their social media posts. Republicans look uncomfortable. The media is frantically typing, ready to run with "Pelosi destroys Trump's FBI pick." Then Dan Bongino does something nobody expects. He smiles, not angry, not defensive, not the reaction of someone who's just been publicly humiliated. This is the calm, confident smile of a man holding a royal flush while his opponent just went all in with a pair of twos. "Congresswoman Pelosi," he says, his voice steady and professional, "thank you for that fascinating assessment of FBI operations." He reaches for his briefcase, slowly, deliberately, like a gunfighter reaching for his weapon knowing he's already won. "Since you've questioned the legitimacy of FBI investigations, perhaps we should discuss what the FBI has actually been investigating for the past 18 months. Click. The briefcase opens. Thick folders spill out, classified stamps on every page, FBI seals, Department of Justice markings. This isn't a politician's talking points. This is federal evidence. Operation Congressional Cleanup. Bongino announces his voice carrying the authority of federal law enforcement. A comprehensive federal investigation into political corruption at the highest levels of government. He pulls out the first folder thick enough to be a phone book. Pelosi, family criminal enterprise, eyes only. Nancy Pelosi's face changes. The smug confidence flickers. For just a moment, you can see the realization dawning that this isn't going according to script. Your family congresswoman features quite prominently in our files. The entire dynamic in the room flips in seconds. This isn't a politician being questioned by another politician anymore. This is an FBI deputy director with federal authority about to present criminal evidence against a sitting member of Congress. Ma'am, you seem to have forgotten something important. Bongino continues, his voice getting harder. I command 38,000 federal agents across 55 field offices and 350 satellite offices. When the FBI investigates criminal activity, we don't ask permission from politicians. We don't care about party politics. We don't negotiate with corrupt officials. He opens the second folder, revealing financial documents and surveillance photos. We follow the evidence, and the evidence against your family is extensive. The room is starting to realize what's happening. This isn't the routine political theater they expected. This is an FBI deputy director about to drop classified intelligence on a sitting congresswoman. Democrats are starting to look worried. Republicans are leaning forward. The media is realizing this story is about to go in a completely different direction than they planned. Nancy Pelosi's hands start shaking slightly. The woman who controlled Congress for decades is about to learn what it feels like when federal law enforcement has the upper hand. Smash. That like if you see Pelosi panicking comment, trap set. If you love watching corrupt politicians squirm, this is about to get brutal. Share this now. Bongino pulls out a calculator and sets it on the table with theatrical precision. The room is dead silent, hanging on every word. Congresswoman, let's start with simple arithmetic, something even a failed podcaster can understand. He's throwing her own insult back at her, and the confidence in his voice is devastating. You've served 37 years in Congress at $174,000 annually. Total career earnings from your government salary, $6.4 million. He pulls out a comprehensive financial forensics report, the kind that takes months to compile. Yet somehow your family has accumulated $127 million in wealth. That's a 2,000% return on your government salary. Warren Buffett would be impressed. The numbers hit the room like a hammer. $127 million on a government salary. Now I'm just a failed podcaster, Bongino continues, mocking her earlier attack. But that seems like quite an achievement for a public servant. He spreads financial documents across the table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. But here's where it gets really interesting. Our Financial Crimes Division, you know those real FBI agents you say I shouldn't be commanding, they identified a fascinating pattern in your family's trading activity. The main screens in the chamber light up with a detailed timeline. 73 separate instances over the past 8 years where your husband Paul made major stock trades within 24 hours of your classified congressional briefings. Gasps ripple through the chamber. This isn't speculation. This is documented federal evidence. Let me give you some examples since you question my credibility. March 19, 2020. You receive a classified briefing about COVID-19 economic impacts and upcoming shutdown orders. Information not available to the public. March 20th, 2020, less than 18 hours later, Paul drops $5.2 million on Zoom stock options. Result: Zoom stock explodes 600% as lockdowns are announced. Paul's profit $31 million. The timeline continues relentlessly. June 8, 2021, Banking Committee hearing on new regulations affecting credit card companies, specifically targeting Visa's fee structures. June 7, 2021, the day before the hearing, Paul purchases $4.8 million in Visa call options. After you help weaken the proposed regulations in committee, Paul's profit $3.2 million. August 2022. You participate in classified negotiations on the Chips and Science Act, knowing exactly which companies will receive massive government subsidies. August 14, 2022, Paul goes all in on semiconductor stocks, NVIDIA, Intel, Micron. 1 month later, when the bill passes with your support, $4.1 million profit. The evidence is overwhelming, but Bongino isn't finished. Paul's overall success rate, 98.7% profitable trades. For context, Warren Buffett, considered the greatest investor of all time, averages 65% successful trades. The best hedge fund managers in the world hover around 70%. Bongino's voice gets harder, more prosecutorial. Congresswoman, you're either the greatest financial genius who ever lived, or you're running a criminal enterprise using classified congressional information. Fortunately, we don't have to guess. He produces what appears to be FBI surveillance equipment. Federal judges authorize surveillance of suspicious financial activity under the Bank Secrecy Act and RICO statutes. We have recordings. The room goes completely silent as Bongino prepares to play federal wiretap evidence. The audio quality is crystal clear, professional FBI surveillance equipment. Pelosi's voice unmistakable. The defense appropriations are going to be $50 billion higher than the public numbers show. Paul needs to position heavy in aerospace before the announcement. Paul's voice. Which companies specifically? Lockheed and Raytheon. Pelosi, all of them. The contracts are already decided in committee. Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. This is guaranteed money, Paul. We're talking about a 40% spike minimum. Paul. How much should I put in? Pelosi. Everything we can. This is inside information, Paul. We'll make $20 million easy. The recording stops. The chamber erupts. Republicans are on their feet demanding immediate criminal referrals. Democrats look like they've seen a ghost. Media representatives are frantically typing, realizing they're witnessing the biggest political scandal in decades. Nancy Pelosi is visibly trembling now, her face drained of color. This is selective prosecution, political targeting, she stammers. Bongino's response is devastating in its calm precision. Ma'am, the FBI doesn't prosecute mathematics. Numbers don't have political parties. Statistics don't care about your feelings. He leans forward with the intensity of a federal prosecutor. 98.7% success rate is statistically impossible without criminal insider information. You've been running the most successful insider trading operation in congressional history, and you've been doing it with classified information that belongs to the American people. The FBI is referring this evidence to federal prosecutors for the following charges. He reads from an official document: securities fraud, 20 years per federal count; wire fraud conspiracy, 20 years per count; RICO conspiracy under the organized crime statutes, life imprisonment. 73 instances of trading on classified information means 73 separate federal crimes, Congresswoman. Pelosi tries to respond, but she's stuttering, hands shaking, unable to form complete sentences. My husband makes his own investment decisions. Bongino cuts through her lies like a sword. Ma'am, we have your voice on federal wiretaps coordinating the trades. We have phone records. We have bank transfers. We have Paul's broker confirming the timing. The evidence is ironclad. Then he delivers the moral hammer blow that hits harder than any legal charge. While American families struggle through COVID lockdowns, losing their jobs, losing their businesses, watching their life savings disappear, you are getting rich off their misery. While small businesses died by the thousands, you are profiting from their destruction. While working families couldn't afford groceries, you are making millions from information you swore to keep secret. That's not just criminal, Congresswoman. That's evil. The moral weight of his words settles over the chamber like a blanket of judgment. This isn't just about financial crimes anymore. This is about the fundamental betrayal of public trust. Drop A if this corruption makes you sick. Comment criminal if you want her prosecuted. Share this before they try to protect her. The mood in the chamber shifts dramatically. Bongino's demeanor changes from prosecutorial to something much more personal and emotional. This isn't about money anymore. This is about death. Congresswoman, let's discuss January 6, 2021. As Speaker of the House, you had ultimate authority over Capitol security that day. His voice drops to barely controlled fury, the kind of anger that comes from someone who's seen the consequences of political corruption up close. People died, ma'am. 5 Americans lost their lives. 140 police officers were injured. And our 2-year investigation shows you could have prevented all of it. He opens a new folder thicker than the financial crimes evidence. Operation Capitol Shield, the FBI's comprehensive investigation into January 6th security failures. What we found will disgust every American. The FBI provided your office with 27 separate threat assessments in the weeks leading up to January 6th. 27 detailed warnings about potential violence, armed groups, and coordinated attacks on the Capitol. Bongino begins reading from official FBI documents. December 30th, 2020, FBI threat assessment warns of armed extremist groups planning coordinated assault on Capitol building, sent directly to Speaker's office with urgent classification. January 2, 2021, Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund formally requests National Guard deployment based on FBI intelligence, request denied by Speaker's office. January 4, 2021, final FBI warning about imminent threat of coordinated violence targeting Congress, marked urgent, ignored. January 5, 2021, Capitol Police make last-minute emergency request for additional security resources, rejected by Speaker's office. The timeline is damning, but what comes next is horrifying. But here's what's truly sick, Congresswoman. Our investigation found evidence that you didn't just ignore security warnings, you deliberately reduced security for political purposes. Bongino produces FBI surveillance equipment again. Federal agents recorded communications between your office and Capitol security. What you're about to hear is the most damning evidence of political corruption I've encountered in my career. The recording begins. The audio quality is professional FBI surveillance, crystal clear, voice identified as Pelosi's chief of staff. The speaker wants minimal visible security tomorrow, Capitol Police Chief. Ma'am, that directly contradicts every threat assessment we've received. The FBI is warning of armed groups, Chief of Staff. I understand the warnings. The speaker's position is that heavy security presence will undermine the political narrative. Capitol Police. What political narrative, Chief of Staff? She needs the protest to look spontaneous and chaotic. The worse it looks, the better it serves our political purposes. Capitol Police. Ma'am, with respect, people could get seriously hurt. Chief of Staff. That's an acceptable risk for the greater political good. We need dramatic footage for the media. The recording stops. The chamber is completely silent. Even Democrats look horrified. This isn't politics anymore. This is evidence of deliberately endangering human lives for political theater. Let me repeat that last part. Bongino says, his voice shaking with controlled rage. That's an acceptable risk for the greater political good. Human lives were an acceptable risk for Nancy Pelosi's political theater. He continues with the human cost, his voice cracking with emotion. Officer Brian Sicknick died that day. Ashley Babbitt, a 35-year-old Air Force veteran, was shot and killed. Roseanne Boyland, a 34-year-old woman from Georgia, was trampled to death in the chaos. Kevin Greason, 55 years old, suffered a heart attack. Benjamin Phillips, 50, suffered a stroke. 5 families lost their loved ones because you wanted better television footage for your political narrative. The devastating timeline continues. January 6th, 6:23 a.m., you personally ordered reduced perimeter barriers around the Capitol. 8:45 a.m., Capitol Police request permission to establish expanded security zones. Denied. 11:47 a.m., final National Guard deployment request submitted by Capitol Police. Denied by Speaker's office. 1:15 p.m., violence erupts at the Capitol complex. 1:18 p.m. Capitol Police radio for immediate backup and reinforcements. 1:35 p.m. Officers begin reporting serious injuries and being overwhelmed. 2:12 p.m. Capitol Police report mass casualty situation and beg for National Guard deployment. 4:22 p.m. You finally authorize National Guard deployment 187 minutes after violence began. 187 minutes, Congresswoman. For over 3 hours while police officers were being beaten with flagpoles, while people were dying, while democracy was under attack, you refused to send help. Why? Because it served your political purposes to let the violence continue. Pelosi tries desperately to defend herself. That's completely false. I wasn't responsible for Capitol security. I never. Bongino explodes with righteous fury. Ma'am, I have 47 FBI agents who spent 2 years investigating this. I have surveillance footage showing your staff coordinating security reductions. I have radio transcripts of officers begging for help. I have your voice on federal wiretaps. He slams an evidence folder on the table so hard it echoes through the chamber. You wanted violence. You wanted chaos. You wanted Americans to die so you could blame Donald Trump and destroy him politically. Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution makes the Speaker of the House responsible for House security. You failed that constitutional duty. You violated your oath of office. His voice rises to fill the entire chamber. The blood of January 6th is on your hands, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is now openly crying, her makeup running, completely unable to respond coherently. The powerful Speaker of the House, who once controlled Washington, has become a broken old woman faced with the consequences of her deadly political games. Federal prosecutors are reviewing charges for criminal negligence resulting in death up to life imprisonment, violation of constitutional duties under color of law, 10 years per count, conspiracy to endanger federal officers, 20 years, depraved indifference to human life, murder charges. You didn't just fail in your duty, Congresswoman. You actively chose to let people die for political gain. Comment, blood on her hands. If you're disgusted. She killed people for politics. Share this truth. Hit like if you think she belongs in prison. Dan Bongino reaches for his briefcase again, but this time the folder he pulls out is different. Thicker, with more classification markings bearing the seals of multiple intelligence agencies. The room senses that what's coming next will be even more devastating. Congresswoman, our counterintelligence division has been very busy over the past 18 months. Operation Dragon's Web, a comprehensive investigation into Chinese intelligence operations targeting the United States Congress. He opens the folder revealing surveillance photographs and intelligence assessments. Guess who their #1 asset is? The photographs go up on the chamber's screens. Clear surveillance images of Nancy Pelosi meeting with an Asian man in various locations around San Francisco. Meet Colonel Lee Wei, Ministry of State Security, People's Liberation Army Intelligence Division. For the past 8 years, he's been your handler. The room goes dead silent. Handler. The word hangs in the air like an accusation of treason. Colonel Lee operates under official cover as a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley's China Studies program. His real job managing American political assets for the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese intelligence services gave you an operational codename Golden Gate Asset. Bongino begins laying out financial intelligence that traces money from Chinese sources to the Pelosi family. 47 documented meetings between you and Colonel Lee over 8 years. Each meeting was followed within 48 hours by significant financial transfers to your family's business network. $31 million traced from Chinese intelligence front companies through shell corporations to Pelosi family trusts and businesses. Real estate purchases in San Francisco, Chinese nationals paying 40% above market value for properties connected to your family. Consulting fees of $2.3 million paid to Paul Pelosi's investment firm for services that were never actually provided. Speaking fees of $500,000 for 20-minute speeches to Chinese business groups that were actually intelligence fronts. But the financial evidence is just the setup for what comes next. Here's the smoking gun, Congresswoman. NSA intercepts of your communications with Chinese intelligence services. Bongino produces professional NSA surveillance equipment. What you're about to hear is classified NSA intelligence being declassified for the first time for this hearing. The recording begins. The voice has a thick Chinese accent, but the English is clear. Chinese handler. Beijing requires immediate delay on Taiwan weapons package. The timeline is too aggressive for our defensive preparations. Nancy Pelosi's voice. I can stall the Armed Services Committee vote for 3 weeks maximum. Any longer and people will get suspicious. Chinese handler. What about the semiconductor sanctions? They're damaging our technology sector. Pelosi. Too aggressive. I agree. I'm working with committee Democrats to water them down. We can probably reduce the scope by 60%. Chinese handler. Your cooperation continues to be noted at the highest levels in Beijing, the usual payment structure through San Francisco real estate. Pelosi. Paul handles those arrangements. Same shell company structure as before, $3 million this time. Chinese handler. Done. Anything else Beijing should know? Pelosi. The classified briefing next week will cover new military deployments in the South China Sea. I'll have details. The recording stops. The chamber is in complete shock. This isn't financial corruption anymore. This is treason. Bongino's voice fills with moral authority and barely controlled fury. You sold out Taiwan, Congresswoman, while Chinese warships circled our democratic ally while they prepared for invasion. You were taking Chinese money to sabotage their defense. Every weapon system delayed, every sanction weakened, every piece of classified intelligence compromised, all because you're a paid agent of the Chinese Communist Party. The damage assessment is staggering. Because of your treason, $12 billion in critical military aid to Taiwan delayed or canceled. Semiconductor technology sanctions reduced from 90% to 35% effectiveness. Chinese intelligence gained access to classified congressional briefings on military deployments. U.S. strategic position in the South China Sea fundamentally compromised. Our allies' trust in American intelligence sharing destroyed. Bongino pulls out a copy of the Constitution and reads directly from it. Article 3, Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. He looks directly at Pelosi with the full weight of constitutional authority. You gave aid and comfort to Communist China while they prepared military action against our ally Taiwan. You provided classified intelligence to a hostile foreign power. You weakened American sanctions for Chinese money. That is the constitutional definition of treason. Nancy Pelosi has completely collapsed. She's no longer trying to respond, just staring at the table with hands shaking uncontrollably. The most powerful woman in Congress has been reduced to a broken shell. Benedict Arnold sold out West Point to the British for money. You sold out the entire Indo-Pacific region to the Chinese for money. But Arnold only got a few $1,000s. You got $31 million. History will remember you not as a pioneering female politician, but as the greatest traitor in American political history. The constitutional and legal implications are staggering. Federal prosecutors are reviewing charges under the Espionage Act, penalties up to death. Failure to register as a foreign agent, 10 years. Conspiracy to provide classified information to foreign powers, life imprisonment. Treason against the United States, death penalty or life imprisonment. You didn't just betray your oath of office, Congresswoman. You betrayed every American who trusted you to defend this country. Comment: Chinese spy. If you think she committed treason. This is treason. Share before they try to stop it. We're trending worldwide. Keep sharing. Bongino's next folder bears the seal of the FBI's Organized Crime Division. The evidence he's about to present shows that Nancy Pelosi's corruption extends far beyond personal enrichment. It's destroyed an entire American city. Let's talk about your home district, Congresswoman. San Francisco, Once the crown jewel of American cities, now a third-world hellscape that tourists actively avoid. $14 billion in federal homeless funding allocated to San Francisco over the past 5 years. Want to know how many homeless people your administration has actually helped? He pauses for dramatic effect. 0. Not a single person. In fact, the homeless population has increased by 35% while you've been stealing their funding. Bongino spreads out financial tracking documents that show a complex money laundering operation. Our organized crime division spent 14 months tracking every dollar of federal homeless funding. Here's how your criminal enterprise works. Step 1. Federal homeless assistance funds flow to San Francisco city government. Step 2. City contracts with nonprofit organizations run by your political associates. Step 3. These nonprofits pay massive consulting fees to companies owned by your major donors. Step 4. Those companies make enormous donations to your campaigns and super PACs. Step 5. The money that was supposed to help homeless people ends up in your political war chest. Classic money laundering using the suffering of America's most vulnerable people as cover. The human cost is staggering and heartbreaking. Under your leadership, San Francisco has recorded 247 homeless deaths over 5 years, 30,000 plus fentanyl overdoses, 75,000 plus reported thefts in 2023 alone, 400% increase in violent crime since 2020, complete collapse of tourism retail business and quality of life. But the most damning evidence is the hypocrisy. You live in a $25 million mansion in Pacific Heights with private security and 10-foot walls surrounding your property, while homeless people die on the streets literally 500 yards from your front door. You employ armed security guards while supporting defunding the police. You built walls around your personal property while calling border walls immoral. Bongino displays aerial photographs of homeless encampments directly outside Pelosi's mansion district. This is the view from your neighborhood congresswoman. Human beings living like animals in medieval conditions while you feast on Chinese money inside your fortress. But it gets worse. We have recordings of your associates discussing how to maximize the skim from homeless funding. The FBI surveillance audio is devastating. Voice identified as nonprofit executive. The feds just allocated another $3 billion for homeless services. How much can we divert without triggering an audit? Voice identified as Pelosi campaign associate. We've been running 30% overhead costs. Nancy needs $2 million for her re-election campaign. Nonprofit executive. That's a lot. What if people start asking questions? Campaign associate, who's going to complain? The homeless don't vote anyway, and the media won't investigate their own narrative. Nonprofit executive. True, make sure the contracts go through the usual shell companies. The callousness is breathtaking, laughing about stealing money from homeless people because they don't vote anyway. You built a criminal empire on the backs of the most vulnerable people in America. While mothers and children slept in doorways, you were stealing their shelter money for political campaigns. While veterans with PTSD died on the streets, you were buying Chinese mansions with their food money. While addicts overdosed in public parks, you were funding attack ads with their treatment money. The moral indictment is complete. San Francisco was once called the most beautiful city in America. Now it's an international symbol of American urban decay. You didn't just fail as a leader, congresswoman. You actively destroyed one of America's greatest cities for personal profit. Federal charges being prepared. RICO conspiracy, organized criminal enterprise. Wire fraud, stealing federal funds. Money laundering, $14 billion criminal proceeds. Conspiracy to defraud the United States government. You turned public service into organized crime. Drop A if this hypocrisy makes you sick. She destroyed the most beautiful city in America. Comment, heartless, if you're disgusted. For his final devastating assault, Bongino produces a folder marked with the seals of both the FBI's Cyber Division and the Department of Homeland Security. This evidence will prove that Nancy Pelosi didn't just steal money or betray national security, she helped steal an American presidential election. Finally, Congresswoman, let's discuss how you interfered in the 2020 presidential election. The Hunter Biden laptop story. Our FBI labs authenticated the laptop and its contents in December 2019. You knew it was real. You knew it contained evidence of massive corruption involving the Biden family. But it threatened your political power, so you orchestrated the biggest disinformation campaign in American electoral history. Bongino displays internal communications between Pelosi's office and former intelligence officials. October 13th, 2020, one day before the laptop story breaks. You personally coordinate with 51 former intelligence officials to sign a letter falsely claiming the laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Not a single one of these officials examined the laptop. Not one had any evidence of Russian involvement. They simply lied because you asked them to. The FBI surveillance recording is damning. Pelosi's voice. We need that letter claiming Russian disinformation ready by tomorrow morning. The Post is going to publish the laptop story and it could destroy Biden. Aide. How many signatures do we have? Pelosi, 51 former CIA and intelligence officials, more than enough to kill any story. Aide. What if reporters ask them for evidence? Pelosi, they won't. The media will run with Russian disinformation without any fact-checking. They always do when it helps Democrats. Nah. Aide. What if the laptop turns out to be real? Pelosi. By then, Biden will be president and it won't matter. We just need to suppress it until after the election. But the letter was just the beginning. Within hours of the laptop story breaking, Pelosi coordinated with every major social media platform to suppress the information. Direct government pressure on private companies to censor American citizens before a presidential election. Another devastating recording between Pelosi's staff and Twitter executives. Pelosi staff member. The speaker needs the Post laptop story completely suppressed. Full platform censorship. Twitter executive. We can add warning labels and limit distribution, but completely blocking staff member. Not enough. Lock the Post's account. Ban anyone sharing the story. This is about stopping Trump. Twitter executive. That's unprecedented. It'll look like obvious censorship. Staff member. The speaker doesn't care how it looks. Do it or face Section 230 changes when Biden wins. Twitter executive. Understood. Consider it done. Within hours, Twitter locked the New York Post's account for weeks. Facebook reduced the story's distribution by 95%. YouTube removed videos discussing the laptop content. You didn't just lie to the American people, Congresswoman. You coordinated with big tech to silence them before they could vote. The election impact analysis is staggering. Post-election polling by multiple organizations showed that 73% of Biden voters said knowledge of the laptop contents would have changed their vote. In an election decided by 44,000 votes across 3 swing states, your censorship campaign potentially altered the outcome of a presidential election. You didn't just interfere in an election, you may have stolen it through systematic information suppression. The constitutional violation is clear and damning. The First Amendment prohibits government officials from suppressing political speech. You used your official position to pressure private companies to silence political opposition. That's not oversight, Congresswoman. That's tyranny. You turned the United States Congress into a censorship bureau for the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi has entered a completely catatonic state. She cannot respond, cannot defend herself, cannot even look up from the table. 40 years of political power destroyed in a single afternoon. Federal election crimes being prosecuted. Conspiracy to suppress voting information, 10 years. Civil rights violations under color of law, 10 years per violation. Election interference, 5 years per count. Conspiracy against constitutional rights, life imprisonment. You swore an oath to defend the Constitution, but you used government power to attack the First Amendment. Comment, election interference. If you think she helped steal 2020, this is the smoking gun evidence we needed. Dan Bongino stands up from his chair, every eye in the chamber focused on him. Nancy Pelosi sits broken and defeated, no longer the powerful speaker who once controlled Congress, but a shattered woman whose crimes have finally caught up with her. Congresswoman Pelosi. Bongino begins his voice carrying the full weight of federal authority and moral judgment. In my 12 years protecting presidents of both parties, I learned something that apparently escaped you during your 40 years in politics. Integrity matters more than power. Honor matters more than money. And the oath we swear to protect and defend the Constitution isn't just words, it's a sacred trust with the American people. As FBI Deputy Director, I've spent 18 months leading the most comprehensive investigation into political corruption in American history. Operation Congressional Cleanup has examined your financial records, your communications, your coordination with foreign intelligence services, your systematic abuse of power, and your betrayal of the American people. The evidence is overwhelming. The crimes are undeniable. The damage to our republic is incalculable. He begins reading from an official FBI criminal referral document. I am hereby referring the following evidence to federal prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions. Financial Crimes Division referral. 73 counts of securities fraud, maximum penalty 20 years per count. RICO conspiracy for operating a criminal enterprise, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Wire fraud conspiracy, maximum penalty 20 years per count. Money laundering, maximum penalty 20 years per count. Counterintelligence Division referral. Violations of the Espionage Act, maximum penalty death. Failure to register as a foreign agent, maximum penalty 10 years. Conspiracy to provide classified information to foreign powers, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Treason against the United States, maximum penalty death. Organized Crime Division referral. RICO conspiracy for the Pelosi family criminal enterprise, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Conspiracy to defraud federal programs, maximum penalty 20 years. Theft of federal funds, maximum penalty 10 years per incident. Cyber Division referral. Election interference, maximum penalty 5 years per count. Conspiracy to suppress constitutional rights, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Civil rights violations under color of law, maximum penalty 10 years per violation. Violent Crimes Division referral. Criminal negligence resulting in death, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Conspiracy to endanger federal officers, maximum penalty 20 years. Violation of constitutional duties resulting in loss of life, maximum penalty life imprisonment. Total federal charges 127 separate counts. Potential combined sentence, multiple life terms plus death penalty eligibility. Asset forfeiture target $127 million in criminal proceeds. The legal reality settles over the chamber like a death sentence. This isn't political theater anymore. This is a federal criminal enterprise being dismantled in real time. Nancy Pelosi sits in complete catatonic shock, makeup running from tears, hands shaking uncontrollably, unable to speak or even lift her head, the most powerful woman in American politics reduced to a broken shell. Ma'am, you forgot the most fundamental principle of American democracy. Bongino continues with devastating moral authority. In this country, no one is above the law. Not politicians, not speakers, not even Nancy Pelosi. You thought your political power made you untouchable. You thought your media allies would protect you. You thought your corruption was too big to prosecute. You were wrong. The American people deserve representatives who serve them, not criminals who rob them. They deserve leaders who protect the Constitution, not traitors who sell it to foreign enemies. They deserve public servants who put America first, not corrupt politicians who put themselves first. His voice rises to fill the entire chamber with the force of constitutional justice. Today, we've proven that federal law enforcement will follow evidence wherever it leads, regardless of political party, regardless of position, regardless of power. This is what justice looks like when politics doesn't interfere with law enforcement. This is what happens when real FBI agents investigate real crimes with real evidence. This is what draining the swamp actually means. Bongino's final words carry the weight of historical judgment. Congresswoman, your 40-year political career is over. Your criminal empire is dismantled. Your legacy is destroyed. You will not be remembered as a pioneering female politician who broke barriers. You will be remembered as the most corrupt member of Congress in American history, as a Chinese intelligence asset who betrayed America for money, as a criminal who stole from homeless people while they died on the streets, as a traitor who sold out our allies to our enemies, as the politician who turned January 6th into a bloodbath for political theater. History's judgment is final. Nancy Patricia Pelosi was a criminal who disgraced the office she held and betrayed the country she swore to serve. The chamber sits in stunned silence as the full weight of Pelosi's destruction settles over everyone present. This isn't just a political defeat. This is the complete annihilation of a corrupt politician by federal law enforcement. Smash. That, like, if justice was served, comment, drain the swamp. If you're celebrating, share this everywhere. America needs to see this. The immediate reaction to Dan Bongino's systematic destruction of Nancy Pelosi creates a political earthquake that fundamentally changes American politics forever. Within minutes of the hearing's conclusion, social media explodes with unprecedented force. Pelosi destroyed rockets to #1, trending worldwide, accumulating 47 million mentions in the first hour alone. The video clips of her complete breakdown go viral faster than any political content in internet history. The footage is devastating and impossible to ignore. Pelosi's arrogant opening attack followed by her progressive meltdown as Bongino systematically destroyed her with federal evidence. The moment when she realized she'd walked into an FBI trap, her complete catatonic collapse as the weight of her crimes became undeniable. Every major news network is forced to cover the story, even those that had protected Pelosi for decades. CNN struggles to defend the FBI evidence while their own legal analysts confirm that the charges are credible and devastating. MSNBC goes almost completely silent on Pelosi coverage, unable to spin federal wiretaps and classified intelligence. Even liberal pundits who had championed Pelosi for years are calling for her immediate resignation. The evidence is simply too overwhelming to defend, admits a former Obama administration official on live television. International media celebrates what they're calling American justice finally served. The BBC leads with FBI destroys corrupt U.S. politician, while German and French outlets praise the restoration of rule of law in America. The political earthquake spreads rapidly through Washington. Within 24 hours of the hearing, the House Ethics Committee announces an emergency investigation into Pelosi's conduct. Federal prosecutors in 3 districts confirm they are reviewing the FBI's criminal referrals. The Treasury Department begins asset forfeiture proceedings targeting the $127 million in suspicious Pelosi family wealth. 23 House Democrats announced they will not seek re-election rather than face similar FBI investigations. The Democratic Party goes into complete panic mode as donors realize that Operation Congressional Cleanup has files on dozens of corrupt politicians. Pelosi herself, faced with the complete destruction of her political career and the possibility of life in federal prison, announces through her attorneys that she is taking a medical leave of absence for undisclosed health concerns. Translation: she's never coming back to Congress. The Republican celebration is immediate and overwhelming. GOP members give Dan Bongino a standing ovation that lasts for 12 minutes when he returns to FBI headquarters. Conservative media hails him as the man who finally drained the swamp. Drain the Swamp trends with over 100 million posts as Americans celebrate seeing corrupt politicians finally held accountable. President Trump issues a statement calling the hearing the greatest vindication of federal law enforcement in American history and praising Bongino for showing what the FBI can accomplish when it serves justice instead of politics. The FBI itself undergoes a complete transformation in public perception. For years, Americans had lost trust in federal law enforcement after decades of political weaponization. Bongino's methodical, evidence-based destruction of a corrupt politician restores faith that the Bureau can serve justice without partisan bias. FBI recruitment applications surged 400% in the week following the hearing as young Americans see federal law enforcement as a noble calling again. This is what the FBI is supposed to do, becomes a rallying cry for a new generation of agents. The legal consequences move with unprecedented speed. Federal grand juries are impaneled in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and New York to review the criminal charges. Asset forfeiture proceedings freeze Pelosi family accounts pending criminal prosecution. International arrest warrants are prepared for associates who might flee the country. But perhaps the most significant impact is on American political culture itself. For decades, politicians had operated with effective immunity from consequences. The Pelosi hearing proves that federal law enforcement can still hold the powerful accountable when it operates without political interference. Operation Congressional Cleanup expands rapidly. Bongino announces that the FBI has evidence of similar corruption involving 46 other current and former politicians from both parties. "We're just getting started," he tells reporters. "Corruption doesn't have a party label, and neither does justice." The broader message resonates across America. The swamp can be drained. Corrupt politicians can be held accountable. Justice can prevail when good people have the courage to fight for it. 6 months later, Nancy Pelosi pleads guilty to multiple federal charges to avoid a death penalty prosecution for treason. She receives life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The $127 million Pelosi family fortune is seized and distributed to victims of her crimes. Homeless organizations in San Francisco, families of January 6th casualties, and American taxpayers. The woman who once ruled Washington with an iron fist spends her remaining days in federal custody, remembered not as a pioneering politician, but as the most corrupt member of Congress in American history. Dan Bongino's FBI continues its mission of cleaning up political corruption, restoring Americans' faith that their government can work for them instead of against them. The hearing that destroyed Nancy Pelosi becomes a symbol of what's possible when real law enforcement meets political corruption. The swamp fought back, but federal law enforcement fought harder. Justice delayed became justice delivered. And America remembered what it feels like when the good guys win. Today proved that in America, no one, absolutely no one, is above the law, Bongino said in his final statement. This is what happens when we put the Constitution above politics, when we put justice above party, and when we put America first. The most satisfying political destruction in American history was complete. The swamp had been drained one corrupt politician at a time. Subscribe for more swamp-draining content. Comment what corrupt politician should be investigated next. Share this victory everywhere. Let freedom ring. Hit that notification bell. The best is yet to come.